Today on the Playbook podcast, it's the last day of campaigning before large parts of America go to the polls tomorrow. We'll be bringing you up to speed on that. The Supreme Court will hear arguments about Donald Trump's deployment of tariffs on Wednesday, and the president is already weighing in. And it's day 34 of the shutdown. Will he weigh in on that as well? Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Monday, November 3rd.
And this is the Playbook podcast. Dasha, you've got the cutest guest for our podcast that I have ever seen. Do you want to just introduce who's on your knee for our listeners who can't see the video today?
This is the newest member of the Playbook family. This is Hellis, Helly for short. He is an Irish setter mixed with a poodle. He's 8 weeks old. And he's giving me kisses right now, which I really need on a Monday morning. We picked him up on Sunday morning, and he's just been the sweetest boy. The name, so I'm obsessed with the show Severance, and we were thinking about redheaded characters that we love, and there's a character named Helly in Severance, so he's Helly for short, and Hellis is, this is the nerd in me, is a region on Mars, and I'm reading the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson right now, and obviously Red Planet, Red Pup, Hellis, Helly for short.
If you're listening to this on audio, I strongly recommend you dig out the video clip that shows Dasha's new dog on it, because even if you don't like dogs, this is pretty cute. and anyway, we're going to concentrate on the news ahead, Dasha.
Hellis is going to help us. It's Playbook with a side of puppy today.
Hellis needs to know that this is a very big week in American politics.
That's right.
And even for an 8-week-old puppy, you'd better get engaged, because it's election week in America. Of course it is. First week in November. Very exciting. Lots of America going to the polls tomorrow, and then we have a very, very big moment in the Supreme Court coming on Wednesday. So let's just talk our listeners through, Dasha, what to expect and what's coming up this week, and of course what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is saying about this stuff, because he has not stopped talking about it all day yesterday. Let's start with the elections, because that's the most imminent thing. It's the biggest thing. It's on the
president has a lot to say about it.
He certainly does. It's the only thing on his schedule today is doing tele rallies in Virginia and in New Jersey, where the two governorships are up for grabs tomorrow. So let's start with them, shall we? Virginia, of course, is currently Republican held, Jersey Democrat, but in both cases, we're getting new governors, and the Dems are, I guess you'd say the Dems are expected to win them both. Certainly that is now the expectation in DC, but in New Jersey particularly, the polls have narrowed, and that to me looks like the most exciting race of the two tomorrow, and that's probably where most people's attention is going to be focused over this last 24 hours, is whether the Republicans can pull off a surprise in New Jersey or not.
I mean, even if it's not a surprise, this is going to tell us a whole lot about where the electorate is at. We know the challenges that polling has these days, but this is a year out from the midterms. And yes, so much can happen in a year, but what happens this week is going to create a ton of momentum for the weeks and months ahead. It's going to shape messaging. It's going to shape some of the ads that do end up appearing in the midterms, in the heat of the midterms next year. So this is a really big deal. And it's hard to call it a bellwether, because, places like New York, New Jersey, Virginia, they're not like one-to-one comparisons with some of the races in 2026. However, the storylines, the narratives, the where the velocity is for both parties, it's going to be really revealing. I mean, I am an elections and campaigns nerd, so I am just like stoked for Tuesday night. But I think everyone in the political world is, just because it's going to be a really clarifying event for the next year.
And I do think we should take the polls with a pinch of salt, because how many times have people like you and I been made to look foolish by polls that have come out a couple of days before elections, and then how many times have they been proven to be wrong? Before we get onto New York, was that over the weekend we saw Barack Obama campaigning in both New Jersey and in Virginia. Feels to me like he's playing a more active role in politics than we've seen since he left in 2016. This is.
I wonder why that is, Jack. I mean, it seems like, there are just so many messengers for the Democratic Party out there that are ready to go whole hog on this. Yeah, I mean, it is really remarkable to me, the presence of Obama. He, of course, is a great messenger, but the fact that we're going in that direction, which is backwards in terms of
Nine years backwards, right?
9 years backwards in terms of an ambassador for the party, I think really does say a lot.
But of course, he still polls very well. And there's that old Democratic joke that if Donald Trump did find a way around the 22nd Amendment, he'd have to beat Barack Obama in the election to get a third term.
At this
Which,
point, I mean, I think that's the only
if,
that's the only option Democrats would really have.
I mean, I know you love campaigns. Imagine a Trump Obama campaign. Anyway,
Let's not
we
start
better
writing
not
that
get
book
into
right now.
that. Let's talk about New York, because while the two governorships in those two states is obviously a really big deal, really important jobs, all the buzz and all the excitement and all the media coverage has ended up focused on New York, partly because it's New York City is New York City, but also because, of course, the front runner, Zohran Mamdani, is such an interesting and unusual figure, potentially to be leading America's largest city. Everything about his campaign, the crowds he gets, the buzz around it, the way his opponents are campaigning, none of them give you any indication other that Mamdani is likely to win tomorrow. And that's going to be a big moment, not just for New York City, but in American politics, but potentially a very big moment for the midterms as well, because he's going to suddenly be this big character on our scene.
Yeah, I mean, every Republican that I've talked to is pretty much salivating at this idea because they think that they can absolutely weaponize his candidacy, and then very likely his um time as mayor, in order to make him and elevate him as a face of the Democratic Party, which they believe will be harmful to Democrats. In the 60 Minutes interview with Norah O'Donnell, she brought up this idea that people have actually made some comparisons between Mamdani and Trump in the sort of charismatic, galvanizing forces that they both are. He, of course, bristled at that, but they're not totally wrong. And there's a segment of Democrats that says we absolutely need to learn a bunch of lessons from Mamdani. I think the question is, are the lessons learned from Mamdani, can Democrats actually apply them? Is there anyone that can, use the sort of tactics that he has been able to implement in the same way? And number two, is that going to outweigh, the potential Republican pushback, and the Republicans using him in ads and to kind of make him the new boogeyman of the left?
The problem for the Dems is, like, what is the lesson you learn from Mamdani? Well, the biggest one is be an absolutely brilliant, fluent communicator who just comes across very naturally and very well to people who might not normally agree entirely with your brand of politics. That's not a lesson you can teach very easily. I mean, if it was that easy, they'd all be doing it, right?
Well, there's a reason why no one's been able to replicate Trump either, right?
Totally. The other thing to say about Mandani, though, of course, is that he has focused so relentlessly on the cost of living in all of his campaigning and all of his policies, or most of them, which is what everyone says the Dems should be doing, but they seem incapable of doing. And he has been absolutely laser focused on that. And although, as I said, not everyone might agree entirely with his solutions, he's talking about the thing that every single survey shows you is the thing that matters most to Americans. And that is a lesson maybe the Dems could learn.
That's absolutely right. But you know what? His execution of that and of those policy ideas will also be really critical, both for lives of New Yorkers and again for the politics of that experiment.
You bet. We should also say, happening tomorrow, of course, we've talked about this before, but just to remind you guys, I say that the election potentially of Mamdani will be a big deal for 2026. So, of course, will the vote in California tomorrow be a big thing for 2026? 5 new seats for the Democrats, we think, if that redistricting goes ahead. All the numbers suggest, and now the campaign numbers, the money going in suggests that Gavin Newsom is going to win this gambit comfortably tomorrow. And indeed, California is going to redistrict and basically negate what the Republicans have done in Texas. And, that's quite a political feat if he pulls that off. It's worked for his party. It's also worked for him very well on a personal level, I think you have to say.
Yeah, well, and the redistricting battle, I mean, a lot of people would also say is a bit of a race to the bottom. I mean, no one that I talk to, Republican or Democrat, thinks it's a good thing for democracy. But the argument everyone makes is like, well, they're doing it, so we have to do it. On my C-SPAN show, Ceasefire, I interviewed Congressman Scott Peters out of California, and I asked if he supports Proposition 50. He said it's terrible, but we have to do it. And that seems to be, when people are being honest, that is what most people think about it.
Once we've all got over the breathless excitement of Tuesday night, or at least breathless excitement if you're election geeks like Dasha and I, and indeed our new 8-week-old accomplice on the podcast, who I'm sure going to be watching
He
with you on Tuesday
loves
night.
elections.
Okay. So you're going to be waking up Wednesday morning this week to those results, but then on Wednesday morning, all attention is going to quickly shift across to the Supreme Court for maybe the biggest hearing of the year, certainly one of the very biggest hearings of the year, which is whether Donald Trump indeed has the power and had the power to impose the tariffs that he's been implementing since April of this year. Traditionally, presidents have not had that power except in an emergency. He claims this is an emergency and has upended America's entire economic policy on a whim, and indeed the world's global economic system to a degree on a whim. And we're now asking, did he actually have the power to do that? And if you listen to Trump himself, Dasha, this is one of the biggest moments of his presidency coming this week.
It is because it's been probably actually the biggest policy priority of his presidency. I mean, immigration has obviously been tip top. There's been a lot done on foreign policy, but cutting across, whether it's war and peace, whether it's economy, any kind of international negotiation, and his approach to making the economy better for the American people. He believes that this is the solution for just so much of what he wants to get done. There's no question that for this president, this might be the most consequential Supreme Court decision of all.
Trump has been making the case why he should have this power, why he needs this power in almost every interview I've seen him give for the last few weeks. And he was at it again on Truth Social last night, describing the case on tariffs as, quote, one of the most important in the history of the country. Trump, of course, not a man who's, disposed to understatement, but nevertheless, he is really bigging this up. And what he says is it's not just about the economy, although it is about the economy. He says it's bringing in whatever it is bringing in, tens of billions of dollars for the United States. But he says it's also about giving him negotiating clout. It gives him leverage in these one-to-one meetings with world leaders that he really loves. And he says he uses that sometimes to get a better deal for the United States on trade, but equally on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said in the 60 Minutes interview that he solved 60% of the wars he claims he solved by using tariffs.
Right. With Trump, you can normally double or half it to get to the accurate number. But nevertheless, it is undoubtedly true that he uses tariff powers to bully other countries. And, from a United States point of view, many people may think that's exactly what the United States, most powerful country in the world, should be doing, is asserting its authority in that way. His case is that for the strength of the nation, it makes sense for him to have that power. He's going up against, like I say, decades and decades of history that this was just always a congressional thing, except in an emergency. He was originally saying the trade deficit was the emergency. I mean, that's a pretty thin case to
Yeah,
try
I
and
mean,
make to
this
the
is going to
Supreme
have to
Court.
be up to the lawyers and the justices. But it's something that should potentially be also up to Congress. Congress has very much ceded that power. And when I talk to
Right.
Republicans on the Hill about this, they say, "Hey, we might not like some of this, but the Supreme Court's going to handle it." But he has started to get some pushback on these tariffs from some members of
Right.
Congress that are in farm country, and see their farmers really hurting from some of these policies. But no Republican on the Hill is going to say we're going to actively try to stop Trump from doing
We
this.
we we did see him lose some votes in the Senate on tariffs last week, and
We
that
did.
is a pretty unusual thing. But I think there were three in a row at the back end of last week. Now these aren't actually going to go anywhere because the House is not going to let them, and the House has already passed rules to prevent itself from letting them. But interesting timing, I would say, going into this saying I must have these powers for Congress to actually be slapping on the wrist to say if it was up to us in the Senate at least we would not be going ahead with certainly these three sets of tariffs. So that's a difficult moment for Trump. But as you say, it's going to come down to the legal arguments. The really disappointing thing from a showmanship point of view, Dasha, is that Trump's promise to go and sit in the Supreme Court on Wednesday and watch it is not going to happen. And he said last night he won't be going down there in person.
Yeah, that's right. He is not going. That is one norm that he's not going to break this week.
We've never seen a president do that. I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit strange. Journalist in me would have quite liked to see it. Let's talk about the other big thing that might be happening this week, which is on the government shutdown, and that is something we were talking a lot last week about whether the 1st of November, which of course was last Saturday, would prove to be a moment when this dynamic shifted, and we're now approaching the moment where this will be the longest government shutdown in history as well. Um, we await the return of senators today to see if the mood is indeed shifting. But the interesting thing that happened at the back end of last week was a court ruling on these SNAP payments, that the government really has to go ahead and make these payments. And there's going to be, I think, another court hearing today on that. They certainly set a noon deadline. So that's an interesting thing to see how that plays out today, because if Trump is forced somehow to make the SNAP payments, that takes some of the pressure off the Democrats, I think, to come to a quick agreement.
Oh yeah, no, that could absolutely prolong this thing, and the length of this shutdown, and I would put a little bit of money on this becoming record setting. I was speaking to a person close to the White House, and this was in a story we reported over the weekend. Um, there was a friendly pool going among some White House staff about how long this shutdown was going to last at the beginning of the whole thing. People wrote down a bunch of different numbers. Nobody guessed more than 10 days.
No way.
Nobody guessed more than 10 days.
No way.
That
Oh,
is like,
man.
if that doesn't tell you what the expectations are versus the reality we're living in, yeah, I don't know what
So,
does.
so they just got it completely wrong. I mean, they misread the mood of the Democrat Party completely, right? I mean,
I
that's
think even some Democrats are surprised that
oh.
they've been able to hold out this long.
Before we go, let's talk about the head of the FBI briefly, Dasha, because we don't normally sort of take a keen interest in the love life of the head of the FBI. That's not sort of a traditional political journalist pursuit, but
Nothing these days is, so here we go.
well, indeed, but Kash Patel keeps posting messages on social media about her because it seems that he used an FBI plane to fly out and see his girlfriend. This is his girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, who's a 26-year-old country music star, perform at a stadium in Pennsylvania. This is all very unusual behavior for a FBI chief, isn't it?
In the wake of all that, Patel fired a top FBI official with 27 years serving in the bureau. In the fallout and being frustrated with these stories. Um,
I mean, it's one thing to be frustrated with the stories. It's another thing to, actually take the plane and go and do it. But anyway, Kash Patel says, criticize me all you want, but going after the people around me is a total disgrace, and gives a fierce defense of his musician girlfriend. You told me you're not a country music fan, I think. Is that right, Dasha?
Cowboy Carter.
Cowboy. We better stop there. Dasha, thank you for being here. Helly, thank you for being here, making
And
your debut.
if you heard panting and whining during this podcast, that was the
wasn't me.
Playbook puppy, not me
That
or
was not
Jack.
me this time. Okay. Thanks everyone for listening. We got loads more news in today's Playbook newsletter. You can find that at politico.com/playbook. And we'll be back tomorrow for an election day special. We'll see you then.